How Matakiapi. I want to say hello to you. Wichoka Yawashde. Good afternoon. I'm going to do a reading out of the book Meditation with the Native American Elders again. And if you ever have like a reading, like a meditation reading or a quote that you would like for me to do, just send me an email or just drop me a message or just a comment on this, and I'd be glad to do that. I think that'd be kind of fun. But today is Saturday. It's a wonderful day here, and I'm really grateful to be with you here today. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that, but first, of course, I always like to get started with a smudge. And I use northern sage that I pick, harvest, shall I say, in South Dakota, and I got a secret spot in Iowa. Don't tell anybody about that, okay? It's just a secret between you and I. Because people usually like to overpick, and they like to over harvest, which is disrespectful to that stewardship that we as the two-leggeds are responsible for. So that's greedy, and that's something that we don't want to do. So that's what I'm always afraid of. So we'll go ahead and get started with the reading for Saturday, December 14th. And again, I just will always issue the disclaimer. I know you probably get sick of me hearing you say this, and I also do want to say that this video is going to be posted to YouTube as well. So I just want to ask people to follow me on YouTube, Michael Wambadi Gdeska on YouTube. And please like and share so this page can grow. I know it's going to take a long time, but with your help, I'd sure appreciate that. So here's today's reading. December 14th, male and female is fundamental to life, partners in work to be done. The Great Spirit created a system which would allow us to reproduce, to have companionship, to love, to cry, and to be happy. Man and woman each have gifts the other doesn't have, but together they have these gifts to share with each other. The Great Spirit made it this way, so let's treat each other with respect. Let us look upon each other in a sacred way. Then there's a prayer at the bottom, a very brief prayer. Grandfather, grandmother, bring the spirits to teach us. Okay, so I really like that because it talks about the value of both man and woman, as far as how it's important for us to get along, for us to honor each other, for us to value each other. I really like that, okay? I really, really like that because typically in our indigenous culture, the man is sort of left out of the equation. The man is sort of, the discussion doesn't really occur when it comes to the value of men. So it's without man and woman, that balance would be out of balance. Without man, there wouldn't be woman. Without woman, there wouldn't be man. We wouldn't exist. And so I really like that it does talk, because this book talks a lot about the value of women, and that is absolutely important. For myself, the way that I grew up, I needed to learn new things. I needed to learn something that was going to put me in balance, help me to see what is healthy in life. And for a lot of my life, I just went without that. Just cut and dry, simple. That's just the way it is. That's the way that it was. And that really influenced my perspective on myself, and it definitely influenced the perspective on how I saw other people. And one of those was the perspective that I saw on women. I saw, and it was, this perspective was taught to me. It was reinforced by TVs, commercials. Back then, we didn't have the internet, by magazines, and the typical sort of Richter scale of value for a woman or even for a man was, how do you look? It was more so based upon how we appear on the outside. Now, that is really important because we do need to look at ourselves, be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and be able to look honestly at the person that is looking back at us. And there's an old Iktomi story that tells us the importance of looking at ourselves honestly. I mean, we need to know. We need to be in balance physically, emotionally, spiritually, and gosh, I'm forgetting. I'm sorry, just because I get a little bit nervous. And so our physical health is just as important as emotional health. It's just as important as spiritual health. It's just as important as gosh, man, I'm telling you, I'm losing it. It's just as important as the seasons. Everything is, so it's important for us to be able to look at, to be able to understand, because our bodies are telling us, our emotions are telling us, our spirits are guiding us. And so without either or, we would be out of balance. And so I was conditioned at a very early age, and it was just reinforced by the TV. It was reinforced by the magazines. It was reinforced that how you appear on the outside was the most important thing in life. It just seemed as though. And then for me, since I didn't have really a healthy upbringing, I was particularly vulnerable to those type of message. So I felt like I needed to live up to those expectations. And I was different. Relative small town South Dakota, you are different. If you're Native American, if you have long hair, and I get really dark in the summertime, relatives. I'm telling you, and back then we played outside. We were too poor. We didn't have Atari, Activision, and now, which is, with the internet, we didn't even have a phone. I even remember living in small town South Dakota, and we had an outhouse. Okay, so we were definitely poor. So since the messages were, hey, you need to measure up on the outside, and I definitely didn't measure up to the expectation, at least I felt that way. So my self-esteem was suffered as a result of that expectation, that society, sort of that message that it delivers on a very conscious level, on a very unconscious level. And since I didn't measure up, I was very, very influenced and vulnerable to what those expectations are. And since I couldn't meet those expectations, man, I tell you what, it was just like a slap in the face no matter where I went. I didn't feel like I ever fit in. I didn't feel like I was important. And what I did feel is I just felt like nobody, like I felt unlovable. I could really go on and on. And so now what I'm learning, and I have learned, thank God, thank Creator, Wakantika, Wopula, thank you, that yes, the outside is important because first impressions are important. If I want to get a job, if I want to find a mate, if I want to represent my family, my Tioshpaye, I can't necessarily be walking around without, like our Lakota Dakota men, we take care of our hair. It's just part of who we are. We take care of our hair. We manage our hair because there is a belief there about the hair stories, the beliefs about that. So our appearance on the outside is important, but it's rooted not in commercialism or materialism like I wanted it to be, because I was suffering on the inside and I had to look on the outside to how I can measure up. So whatever's cool, then I'm going to try and be like that. I'm going to try and talk like that. I'm going to try and look like that. But again, small town South Dakota, back in those days, if you don't measure up, and I certainly look different, okay? And I could go on and on and on about that. But those were rooted in very shallow, that's why they say beauty is only skin deep, okay? But when beauty is rooted in spirituality and acceptance and love, acceptance for others, and is rooted in a different way, well, then that affects the outside as well. And that to me is man, I'll tell you what, I've seen so many beautiful moments, so many beautiful people that have this belief that they are ugly. And for the most part, most of the time, that has something to do with what's going on the inside of them. And so that can really show on our appearance. And so I'm just, like I said, I'm just really grateful that that has changed for me. And so now my perspective and my value upon others has changed too. It's not bow down to whoever's the coolest. I don't watch TV realities. I don't know who the newest singers are or the newest movie stars. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. I haven't watched TV in about 15 years, so I just don't know. But what I do know is that value in life has much more to do with what is going on the inside of us. And so for a long time, because I thought that the outside appearance was the most important, I viewed the opposite sex, women, and even whoever it was, no matter who it was, I valued that. I saw that as the indicator. I saw that as the barometer of the scale of the value of a person. And so that was, for me, what I found out is that there was always more to people than what meets the eye. And I certainly knew that there was definitely a lot more to me that meets the eye. That life is meant to be explored. And if I'm just exploring on what I only see, and I'm not listening as far as the perspective of the viewpoint of the eye, which is very important. But there was a study that went on. They said that, if a person was raised in the dark, like a child was raised in the dark, the body would acclimate itself and it would see the eyes as not necessary. So it would make that adjustment. And so that all that growth and all that energy could be focused on developing the other sensory systems, the ears, just like the ability to smell, the ability to pick up on things, to these other senses that we have. And so what I needed to do is for myself is to develop those other senses. And so that's part of natural law. That's part of being in harmony. And so for a lot of time, I was out of harmony. But again, relatives, that was the culture. And that is still relatively the culture now. And so that's and the reason why I like that, to bring that up, is that I was very, very judgmental. Now, I didn't mean to be. Okay, so I'm bringing in the element of forgiveness for myself, forgiveness, just walking in forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a religious term. It doesn't have to be that type of term that needs to be that we use only on Sunday mornings or Sunday afternoons when we're going to church. Forgiveness can be a mindset that doesn't have to be what somebody else teaches us. Okay, so what I've chosen to do is I've chosen to use different language and apply different definitions upon that. And so when I do that inner reflection based upon these type of books, I am taking that opportunity to go below the surface level and the skin level, and that is a gift. I've chosen to look at as a gift. As prior to when I was growing up, it certainly wasn't a gift because the message was quite clear. The value upon how people are going to see you is going to be skin deep. Okay, and so now, nope, sorry. Bye, goodbye. I'm not. That's not the type of person that I want to be. That's not the type of person that I am. I am a person that wants to evolve. I want to grow. I want to become the type of person that my ancestors were. I want to become a praying type of person, a person whose value is based on who I am. Now, if you look at it, and there's either in society standards, I fail. I am a failure in mainstream societal standards because a lot of the standards also include, well, what does that credit score? What does that credit score look like? Okay, and if you're looking at me, I've been through just year after year and a multitude of health struggles. So my credit just sucks. So if I don't have, now I'm not saying good credit is good nor bad. I'm just saying that's just something that is a part of my life. My value cannot be contingent and based upon my credit score or my credit cards or my ability to have things. And I'm not saying that wanting things and having things is negative relatives, but all I'm saying, if it becomes contingent and it becomes a crucial ingredient on the person that I am, well, guess what? I'm in trouble because of health problems over the years. My credit is pretty sketchy, but does that make me less of a human being, less of a man? No. I go back to the principles and the values that my ancestors went through. Am I respectful? Am I an honest man? Do I think about others? Am I a giving person? And when you come to me and ask me for something, how do I give it to you? How do I give to the less needy? How am I a good listener? Do I have respect for people? Do I have respect for our relatives from the two-legged nations, from our four-legged nations, our winged relatives? How do I respect Grandmother Earth? What am I doing in my life that brings value to those around me? And so, yes, I'm a failure when it comes to some societal standards, but does that mean that I am less of a person? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I have found ways to see the gifts of having a poor credit score. I have found ways to find the positive in what seems negative. And so I say that with a lot of I do wish that we're different, but you would be able to pick up on my BS, all right? And so the reason why I bring that up is because I saw, when it comes to women, I saw, hey, if they don't measure up to societal standards, then their level of value is less than the other person. Now, the other person could be getting away with highway robbery, but hey, they look good on the outside, so I'm willing to bypass that. I'm willing to look past that. But you know what? The soul, the spirit never lies. It never lies. The soul, the spirit always tells the truth. And so when I tried my best to fit into that system of belief, and since I was already coming from behind anyway, I had to learn how it is for myself in my own healing. I really had to come to that terms. I had to look deep inside the mirror and go, in the old stories, they didn't have mirrors, so that your elders would take you down to the river. They'd take you down to the lake. And they'd say, well, now we want you to, grandson, this is very important. This is a very important time in your life. You're growing. It's time for you to learn about what it is, what a person, what are people, what we believe, what makes a good person, what makes a good man. And one of the things that I think is important to remember is that we all make mistakes. We all fall down. No one is perfect. In fact, we're so far. In fact, being a spiritual person is acknowledging and accepting the fact that I make mistakes, that I have work to do upon myself. And I'm the first one to raise my hand and say hello, because I can do a video like this all day long, but it's the closest people to me that know me the best. And if you were to ask my family, they would say, oh yeah, Mike, he's come a long way, but he's got a long way to go. And I just say thank you, because that is a gift. I accept that about myself. And so when I do that, the universe, creation, Wamakaska, all of creation starts, because neither is the universe and all of Mother Nature walks within that balance as well. Good and bad reside in everything that lives, that is alive, whether it be in the unseen world and whether it be with what we see in the visible eye. And so since that is natural law, when I'm living like that, I'm living with natural law. I'm living in harmony. And so now it's also really important for me to start to self-assess and evaluate, what am I like when I'm out of harmony? Now, that's a whole nother question, obviously. But how am I asking that question is just as important. The old way of me asking the question is almost like with a slap, with a punch. What's wrong with you? How dare you? All these kind of different type of languages. And so now when I self-assess, I realize that type of thinking takes me out of harmony. That is out of harmony ways of life that I've been conditioned. It's not my fault. It's just not my fault. I was a child. And so now what I've done as part of this road of forgiveness and healing for myself is I don't play that. That's not how I play. That's not how I do. That's not even, I don't have that belief system no more. I've made that evaluation and I've assessed that honestly, and that takes a lot of hard work. That takes a lot of gut wrench. You got to have some skin in the game. to do that type of work, because it can be that difficult if we resist. See, we're taught to resist. That's what the culture teaches us. The mainstream culture. It teaches us to resist. It teaches us that being honest is negative. It dehumanizes us. As long as I look the part on the outside, that's fine. I'll get what I need to get in this world. I'll get the approval. I'll get the job. I'll be able to make the money. And of course, that is an easy manipulation, to be seduced by that. I mean, who am I to say or judge you? And certainly, I know what it's like. Okay, I know the consequences of that. And so when the elders would take you down to the lake, and you would have to do, and they would ask you, they would guide you lovingly, not with the back of the hand or strict words, but lovingly walk you down to the river, or the lake, and say, grandson. See, now we're using different words here. Okay, because no matter how old you are a grandchild to Grandmother Earth. You are a grandchild to relatives from all of creation. And there's stories that back that up. There could be a fox that come out of nowhere and you're sitting there, and that might be a grandma. That might be a grandpa. Okay, so I mean, I'm just speaking in indigenous beliefs, indigenous philosophy relatives. I mean, take it for what you need, but I like that. I like to think no matter how old I am, that I am still a grandchild. I'm still a grandson. I am still feeling the loving influence of the ancestors. That grandson energy, that grandma energy, that grandpa energy. I still feel it in here. And so for me, that's really important, because grandma wouldn't yank me around and cuss me around and say, and grandma would teach me that, grandson, what's more important is the person that you are, the person that you are becoming. You are a gift. You represent yourself. You represent me. You represent our family. And the way that our teachings are is that what is more important is what you can give away. What is more important in life is how you treat people. How do you give? How do you speak to others? And yes, you're never going to be patient because you've been through a lot. You have been through a lot, grandson. And so you have a lot of learning to do. You have a lot of teachings that you need. We know you've done your best. We know that you've done some things that you carry around, and we need you to start to release those. And the only way that you can release those is to accept the teachings. We need you to look in the mirror. And we need you to do that with the type of honesty and the type of value and the type of principles that transcends, that is much more valuable than anything you could ever own. Because one day those will all be gone. And when you cross over and when you come back, the spirits aren't going to ask you. They're not going to be worried about what kind of SUV or what your car was, or or what cell phone you, or whether you had a hot tub, or whether you had a 75-inch big screen TV, or whether you didn't have a TV. They're not going to be interested in that. What they're going to want to know is what you prioritized in your life, how you learned, how you overcame, how you treated other people, how you were able to help other people, the type of man that I was in. And so they would do so in a forgiving way. And so forgiveness for me has a lot to do with how I live my life. Because every day, because I'm in balance, okay? And now what happens is I've stopped resisting. All this energy into resisting is now applied towards working with. I don't even have to work so hard when it comes to that. Is because the universe, Grandmother Earth, all of creation, all of Wamakaska, and even within will know that I have become teachable and now I'm ready. And so they will then work with me. Instead of trying to focus their efforts on to get my attention for my healing, they now say, grandson, now you're ready to start to learn to be in harmony. And now we need you to learn. Now for myself, that was just the beginning. Is now I needed to learn how I got myself into trouble. I needed to learn equally. Now this is the part most people avoid because it's difficult. It's much easier, like they say, to point the finger. It's much easier. It takes the stress. It takes the tension off of us. Now that is important. Okay, that is important to be able to safely point the finger if you know something's wrong, if you know somebody has wronged you, if you know somebody is responsible for the harm of yourself or somebody else. That is called justice. That is equally a part of being in imbalance as well, because I know so many people, and myself included, what it's like to not feel, and that was part of the value in the validation that I sought from the material world, is that I didn't feel safe enough to say, hey, this is going on and I'm being harmed. And so that was part of the deep reflection that I needed to do. And then I also equally needed, and that safe place needed to be presented. I needed to learn to walk to the campfire of a safe circle. I needed to. So now sometimes you don't know what's safe. You don't know what's danger. We can become so out of harmony that we actually are afraid and don't trust those sacred campfires. And so what we're doing now is we are developing these sacred circles, these sacred campfires where people can come to. That it doesn't matter how you look, it doesn't matter what society thinks of you, we welcome you to this sacred circle. We welcome you to this campfire. We are taking each other down in a sacred way. Hand in hand. We're not doing this alone no more. We don't have to do this. It wasn't relatives. It wasn't meant to be done alone. Yes, there are times when we need to go out and be amongst Mother Nature or in our own homes. Yes, that is important too. And so what I've had to do for myself, and what I highly recommend to anybody, to evolve and learn to be able to understand your own life story and where you come from, and to look beyond even one's own self, because often these patterns of behavior and living and beliefs are passed down from generation to generation. And so what we're doing is we're not only healing ourselves, is we're helping to heal our ancestors. We're helping our ancestors to be at peace. We're helping our ancestors to heal. And so I can't just go, howdy doody time, I'm done doing the work. You know, I pointed the finger and now I'm doing better. No. Part of being, because it's that balance of Grandmother Earth, the balance of all of creation, good and bad. Those are the English terms. Again, we have to really start to look at the types of English words that we're using. English words are very, very limited because they were designed to be limited. And they are reinforced every day by how we use them. So just keep that in mind. But everything in Grandmother Earth, all of creation, from beginning to end, it will always be about good and bad. Okay, so in order to do that, now I got to do the reflection. I got to put the skin in the game. I have to bare my soul and start to understand where it is that I am out of harmony. Me. And we can start have that conversation about where culture, where society is out of harmony too. We provide those safe spaces. But I'm not going to wait on you, okay? I'm not going to wait on the government. I'm not going to wait on my significant other. I'm not going to wait on my children. I'm not going to wait on my mother or my father or my grandma and grandpa to arrive at that point for themselves. Unfortunately, that is on an individual basis. That's not up to me. Do I wish it was? Yes, I do. But it's not. That's a fact of life. And so now I have to learn where it is that I go out of harmony, where it is that I've learned to be out of harmony. And that is a rough ride. Relatives, that is, whew. You know, I've worked some of the hardest jobs that you can. I've roofed houses in the middle of summer, okay, with all that humidity. I've worked in the packing plant, some of the greasiest, dirtiest jobs, some of the worst things that you can possibly, jobs you can do, but none of that pales in comparison to doing that type of work that evolves us and brings us into in harmony thinking with all of creation. But again, when we do that, we are now resisting. We have stopped resisting, and we start to live and operate and think and see in the perspectives of that interconnectedness with all of creation. And that can be very overwhelming because the creation, the spirit world, and even ourselves, we know this. We cannot fool ourselves. We know this already. We know when our guard's down. We know when our guard's up. And even if that is something that we have to learn, we start to understand that, hey, there was something deep inside of me that pretty much kind of knew what I was learning, but I really needed to find a safe place to put that into practice, to admit that. I needed to find a safe place. And sometimes we have to go outside of ourselves to find that safe place. And sometimes that safe place can be very, very damaging. Alcohol, drugs, materialism, being overworked, working 80 hours of work. But again, that's the culture says, hey, you work hard, man. I got your respect. And the culture just strengthens that because the culture isn't designed to go deep within. And so for the most part, if I'm doing drugs and I'm living that street mentality, guess what? I'm going to get a bunch of tattoos. I'm going to do all this to meet that exterior need, right? And for the most part, the people are going to say, hey, you're tough. You're cool. You're the bad boy. So I'm going to find some aspect of culture that is going to value all this ink, that is going to place me on a hierarchy of not only what I appear, they're going to reward my behavior. And so we can find that wherever we go, and that's up to you. All right? But I'm making my investments into myself, okay? Not in what somebody thinks about me, but what I think about me. And the rest of that is just going to come, okay? The rest of that is because, again, natural law starts to work with you. And when you let down those guards and you start to get honest, even if it's just baby steps, natural law knows that you're going to do that, knows that you're taking another step in your evolvement. It knows, and so it's going to kind of like reward you, and that's really sort of, it's just natural. And so oftentimes you're going to feel kind of like bum rushed because now you've stopped resisting and now you're applying that energy that you have. It's the same amount of energy into resisting that and having to live by the status quo of this materialistic society, working 60 hours a week, 45 hours a week, giving up your hobbies, giving up in trying to look the way that you think that I'm supposed to look. It's the same amount of energy. Not revealing and not allowing people to get close to me, not being emotionless and being the tough guy and looking out for others can be good, but if we're neglecting ourselves, then there's something going on there, because the best gift that we can do for other people that love us is to take care of ourselves, because now they don't have to worry about us no more. That growth, they will start to see that growth. But if you have friends that are invested in you staying the same, that's where it really gets uncomfortable. And that's why we're trying to provide sacred circles where you are welcome to use the language of the heart. And so that's what will happen. All right, I know from experience that is my everyday. That's how it is for me every day. That's on the daily for me. So it can become a way of life. And then pretty soon you'll start to meet new people. You'll start to go different places. And so what happens is you start to see the perspective that the grandmas, the ancestors have. Because now they're working through you. Now you're teachable. And so now you can also start to work on yourself. And this is being in harmony, and it's usually, since we've been acculturated and socialized to feel uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, we're scared. We're terrified when we have to do that inner work. We're just absolutely, because it can be. But they say that I think they say that a habit to break takes like 2 weeks. I mean, 2 weeks compared to a lifetime? Are you kidding me? I mean, I was a youngster and I felt like I've lived like I was an old man. That's how life had beaten me down before. And when I finally got to a point where I just was done with it, I was done. Creator, help me. I felt like that's why they start talking about like religious terms like reborn or given it another chance. In the Sweat Lodge, in the Inipi Lodge, you physically and spiritually, in every aspect, you kind of do that. But if I'm going into the Sweat Lodge and I'm not there to ask the spirits to help me, but just to get me out of trouble, guess what? I'm not really going to be growing. I'm going to be resisting. I'm going to be limiting myself because I'm afraid. And so that definitely, going back to the reading, it definitely had an effect on who I saw when the elders brought me down to the lake and said, what are you seeing when you look? What is your reflection telling you? And so now it is completely different. And relatives, this has nothing to do with intellect, okay? I guarantee you that I'm not any smarter than the next person, and I'm not putting myself down, but I'm not certainly putting somebody up here. We're walking in balance together. My weakness is I suck at math. You might be good at math. I'm good at other things, okay? It balances itself out, okay? So if you're waiting for that right moment to come along, well, guess what? It's not going to come along. It's just simply not going to come along. That is, we've been socialized to say, well, I'll do it on Monday. Guess what? Mondays are a man-made construct. Time on the wall is a man-made construct because we needed to have those to support a industrialized, or however you want to call it, so that we could progress. Okay, well, look where we've progressed to. It's time to take a real self. In other words, we're in our indigenous way, we say we walk in two worlds. We walk in our indigenous perspective, our traditional cultures, and we walk in this mainstream culture. Now, you don't have to be indigenous to have to want to be able to walk that way. That's up to you. So in respect, I operate on spiritual time. Quite simply, okay, I do look at the clock and I say, I need to be here, I need to be there, because again, I got to keep a roof over my head, got to keep the bills paid. But my spirit operates on spiritual time. Just simple as that. But it also operates on seasonal time with creation. So oftentimes we have to make that determination and look at ourselves, because typically what happens when we tried to do this before is we were trying to plant corn like in the winter season. You know what I mean? Like our environment around us wasn't conducive to what our spirit was telling us to do. And guess what? It's never going to be. So you cannot wait on the timing of a man-made construct. We have to look at our spiritual time, our spiritual selves, to tell us when is right. And if you're watching this video, and the time is right now. And so all I can do to help you with that is to say is to pass down or to share my experience. Is when you start to do that, when you start to raise that question, creation will know that you're raising that question. And so it will start to work with you. It will start to sense that you're letting down this little bit, you stop just even the smallest bit of resistance. It will almost kind of find that loophole, that secret stash within us. Oh, he's teachable. She's teachable. And it'll you can't see it, but you can feel it. It'll find that way within us and it'll know where to go. But because it's such hard work, we will start to get afraid. We will start to rationalize. And we'll say, well, I'll make an appointment next month. Okay, well, I'll start to. So that's typically what we know. That is usually an indication that something positive is happening. It doesn't have to be negative. If we start to go into those habits of rationalizing, that is a good place to be, because now we become aware. Oh, this is my typical pattern. This is where I usually back off. And so when we start to identify that that is a teachable moment. That is an awesome. Now we are in a place to be honest. And so creation will start to work with you. It'll start to say, hey, this is where I usually start to BS myself. This is where I usually start to focus the blame on somebody else. This is where I usually start to rationalize between money. Money is definitely can be a barrier. But it doesn't have to be the determination of my growth. In fact, it might do you some good to just take complete worrying about money completely off the table and look at the long term. Think in terms of soul time, spirit time. Think in terms of true value. Think in terms below skin level. And so that's typically where people turn back. Okay, that's because it's too hard. But we make it too hard. Again, turn off the TV. And so because, again, the Western culture, the civilization, I'm going to shut this because somebody's doing something with some. It's my neighbor. I love my neighbor. I love my neighbor. I love my neighbors. What am I saying? And so that was my perspective on other people. And that includes women, that includes other people, men, that includes everything. And so that has changed. And it includes who I look when. Because you can always go back down to the lake and ask the grandmas and grandpas to help you to look within at the person that is looking back, and ask them to do an honest self-assessment, an honest self-evaluation on what have been your priorities, the efforts that you have made, and to help them help you, ask for that help for you to identify the ways that you've been resisting, the ways that you've been out of harmony, because you cannot go forward unless you understand where it is that you came from. But I promise you that the Western way of thinking is going to say, that's the past, just keep moving forward. And look where we are now, relatives. Just look where we are now. And so when you do have to put the skin in the game, and when you do have to make that self-evaluation, change your language. Bring new language into it. But also make sure you understand that when you're doing that, you're not doing it alone. Okay? You're not, because creation is working with you. And that's where dreams come into play. That's where when your gut feeling says, I need to do something different. Today I'm going to take a walk. I need to schedule a vacation. I need to go back to the sweat, the inipi. I need to go to church. I need to go to that community event. I need to make that phone call. Okay? Small things such that puts you on the road of self-evolution. Okay? Because you never know. I can't tell you how many. I guarantee you, if I go somewhere that I know that is how shall I put it? That is a healthy place for me to go to. I know automatically I'm gonna meet somebody new. I know it happens every single day. And so you start to branch out. You start to meet new people that are going to, that's creation's work. That's natural law. Because now, do I even need to explain that, relatives? And that's going to change. That's going to heal parts of me that need healing. Okay? And you're never too old and you're never too young. Because remember, we're not thinking in terms of the clock on the wall. We're thinking in terms. So if you're feeling the weight and pressure of Western thinking that says I should have known by now, understand now that this is your opportunity to reframe that. You've been abusing yourself when you've been saying that to yourself. And then that's what you went with. And guess what? Year after year after year, you find yourself in the same place. Because you're thinking in terms, leaving out spiritual time, leaving out spiritual words, leaving out natural law, and dehumanizing ourselves in regard to what we even consider human. When we say human, guess what we're doing? We're leaving out everybody else. We're leaving out all of creation. We're leaving out the universe. We're leaving everything out. We weren't meant to do that. It is out of harmony. Okay, so you can make change just like that, no matter how old you are. Just by changing the words and how we use that. Even if using the word I love you, or even using the word we have to really start to manage our own healing. And even if I don't feel like I'm forgiving, we start to use words. And eventually those words start to pierce through our thick skins that we've needed to develop over years and years of being socialized to think only a certain way. And, there's different ways of saying that. Harm reduction. They say all these things. But man, the natural world is going to help us, relatives. All we have to do is ask. And then take that next step. And then take that next step. And then take that next step. And always be grateful because we're still here, right? We're still here. We haven't given up yet. We've been through so much. Because we've been trying to do it alone and we've been boxed in. We've been put in a box. And we've said, and for the most part, the culture has said, you stay in there, you look the way you look the way we talk, we look the way we think you should look, you act the way we think you should act, you believe the way we think you could believe, and now only you can step out of that box if you meet those standards. But that's not spiritual thinking. You have to learn how to use your wings. All right, well, anyways, I'm going to go again. I want to just ask everybody, my YouTube page, it's new, so I'm just taking my time with this. I'm in no hurry. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I'm just following whatever I feel is going to help. That's it. The results, I'll leave up to my esteem. My value isn't going to be based upon how many followers or how many shares that I get. But if you want to share, if you want to like or subscribe, that would be pretty cool because guess what? We're becoming a Tioshbe. We're becoming a family. We're not doing this alone. We're reaching out to each other. Okay? We need each other. We need other like-minded people like us that are wanting to grow, that are wanting to break out of the box. Okay? So with that, I'll see you again soon. Again, my YouTube page is Michael Wambadi Gadeska. And I will see you again. Hey, how you doing, Rachel? Good to see you, Brooke Ashley. Bailey, good to see you all. Yeah, awesome. I'm reading the message now. This is on Facebook. Thank you, anybody, for watching. Feel free to comment. Feel free to message me. Feel free to reach out to me. If you ever want to do something like this on a together basis, it's just you and me. That would be an awesome way to grow. My email is on my YouTube page, etc., etc., etc. I don't want to wear out my welcome. I'll see you again soon.